Cars were coming in, but it was just as many horses on the street as cars, as I remember it. And you could play baseball and hockey on the streets anywhere, and there was no traffic. Good times were over, and the Depression was just starting. So everybody was rushing around trying to keep a job. In the meantime, in 1932, I joined the Grenadier Guards in Montreal, the Canadian Grenadier Guards, as a second lieutenant. And I joined them because my father and uncle had been in them in World War I was more interested in sports. I was well known in the athletic world at that time, and there were good jobs to be had in Sudbury, so I went up there to paddle in the Canadian Championships, and I never came back. I just stayed and got a job in the mines. After a year or so, I had enough money to get out of them and get several little jobs in Sudbury, and then start my own insurance business. And then the war came, so back I went to the Grenadier Guards. I found myself the chief instructor for the first Canadian Army Winter Training School, because they decided to put everybody on skis and snowshoes for the winter of 1940-41. They picked me because I was a well-known skier. I'd just come back from winter training school, and the colonel called me in and said, "You're transferred to Ottawa." "Oh," he said, "we need you badly because you're an expert in winter training, an expert in snow." Then I found myself in the 1st Special Service Force, half American, half Canadian, and we landed up in Helena, Montana, not knowing where we were going because it was a secret force. Nobody's supposed to know. About 1,000 Canadians and the same number of Americans. I was being trained in parachuting when I first arrived, yes. And then I was told I was going to be a battalion commander. Put it briefly, we trained there, and in 9 months we had to train in parachuting. That's the first thing we had to do. Within a week, you had to do your jumps in a week and qualify. We went to Kiska, first ones in, and the Japs had just left. So we got out of there and went back to Frisco, and they whistled us across because Eisenhower wanted us in Italy because we were mountain troops, trained in mountains, and that's just the place he needed us. So the British tried, and they were thrown off, and the Americans tried, and they were thrown off. And then they whistled us in, but we were mountain troops prepared for that. And we found a back route up, or we couldn't possibly do it in daylight. We'd be all killed. So it had to be done in stages of 2 nights. So the first night we moved up through the trees to as far up as we could go and not be caught by the Germans. And then everybody lay down and slept all day. And then, as soon as it got dark, we moved around through a route that we discovered that brought us up behind the German lines. And it was a steep mountain climb with rocks, with ropes and so on. And the Germans never expected anybody to come up there, so they weren't prepared. So we literally came in behind them before daylight and surprised them. So that's when the fight started up there. So there was 4 or 5 days of intense fighting because the Germans they threw everything they had at us at that time. It was bad weather. It was December. There was snow, there was ice, there was rain, and there's clouds. So the clouds hung over the mountain. Basically, they were our worst enemy because, it was sort of a ghostly fight where clouds would go up and you'd see 5 or 6 Germans over there, and they'd see you, and boom, the clouds would come down, and then you'd say, "Now, I wonder where those fellows are going. Will we stay here, or we better move?" So and then you move and you might run into them. Every army, every unit has those periods of time when it's do or die sort of. You hang in and keep it going. You see your friends getting wounded, you see your friends getting killed. Well, it's very hard to describe. That's why we don't too often talk about that particular part of war. If you weren't there, you don't understand. That was our first time into battle there, and you learn in a hurry. You think it's all fun and games up to that point, and then they always say that you have to survive the first 4 or 5 hours of battle. If you do, you might be good for a long time, but it's that first 4 or 5 hours that makes or breaks. All the training in the world doesn't prepare you for the real thing. There are also 3 other mountains that we had to take before the Army could get through and into. And the last one was Mount Majo, which is the one my battalion had to take. So we had about 2 or 3 pretty well solid weeks of fighting and recuperating and then fighting again. And 2 weeks later, they sent us to Anzio, the Anzio beachhead. Day and night fighting, you know. They'd push us back and we'd push them back. I had 2 miles of front to hold with 300 men, which wasn't very much. And you couldn't move in the daytime because they had high ground and we didn't, and they could chase you all over the place with an 88 or a mortar any time you stuck your nose out. So, because our boys wouldn't stand for somebody breathing down their nose, so they just took after them every night by patrol. So it was a lot of patrolling at night. They were frightened to death of us because they didn't know who we were. We were actually holding the front of a division, although we were less than a brigade, really. It was a secret force, and they were always trying to find out who we were because we had special uniforms. We didn't look like American uniforms. We didn't look like Canadian uniforms. And we had baggy pants because they're specially made pants for us that were good for the snow, good for anything. And the Germans used to call us the men in baggy pants. And then they started calling us the Black Devils because we always blackened our face and moved in at night on them. And the colonel got a little sticker for the boys, and they move in on the Germans and put a little sticker on their head or something after they shot them. At one time they had something like a month's holiday. Anybody could capture one of our boys and bring them in, you know. That's how it started off, and then it ended up by being the Devils Brigade. Or the Little Black Devils. They used to call us the Little Black Devils, too. Little Black Devils were here tonight, you know. We had quite a reputation with the Germans. Actually, our boys just loved fighting. I don't know why. But if anybody else could do something, they didn't like it. They said it was too easy for us. But if you threw a mountain at them, well, we can take that, you know. Yes, well, of course, at that point in time, I suppose we'd pretty well lost half the original group. We broke out. We had to go through the mountains to get out and protect the right flank of the infantry of the breaking out to Rome. We broke through and pushed the rear guard, fought them sort of through the streets of Rome, and the next assignment was to go into southern France by rubber boat. I didn't want to take on a whole new project and retrain my battalion, and I knew I needed a couple of months left, so I asked to be relieved. And no, you didn't have battle fatigue in those days. Well, I reached a point where I couldn't sleep, and my nerves were bad. And I was about 34 by then, because they discovered in Italy that a person can't command a battalion for more than really 6 months in battle. From that day to this, we've had a society all of our own, really. You know, we're still looking after one another. That produced a real strong group of men after the war. A real strong group, those who survived, because it was an experience that put them 10 or 15 years ahead of somebody who probably some at the same age didn't join the Army. A mind is a very funny thing. It has a way of forgetting. It has a way of tucking things away. There's some place back in there where things are tucked away. And they can stay tucked away for days and weeks and months, and then just my bringing it up here with you, means that when I go to bed tonight, one of those little things that are tucked away might come around, and I'll start fight you. Then you start fighting something all over again, fighting something all over again. And so I think you concentrate on the good times, and there are lots of good times, really good times, on leave and good companions and good fellowship and all that sort of business. But then you'll have your 5 or 6 days here and 5 or 6 days there that are the tough times.
We're the D-Day Dodgers out in Italy, always on the vino, always on the spree. 8th Army Skivers and the Yanks, we live in Rome and stuff the twanks, for we're the D-Day Dodgers out in Italy. We landed at Salerno.